Today, our guest speakers are going to be Ms. Rodriguez, our acting chief of the EAP program division, Ms. Sharon Thompson, who's our headquarters A1SA community readiness consultant, Ms. Melissa Reyes is our EFMP family support program manager, and then Ms. Sarah Johnson is our EFMP medical RN here at the Central Cell. And so without further ado, hopefully Ms. Rodriguez was able to get her mic working. Ma'am, are you here?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Appreciate your time with us this morning, and thank you again for joining us in a great discussion on the DAF Respite Care, where we're going and where we're at. Your collaboration throughout this transition is invaluable, and we truly appreciate your commitment to ensuring a smooth transition for our families. So again, thank you for your time today. We look forward to a great discussion and appreciate your insights and contributions.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Appreciate your time. And folks, we will get this party moving. Over to Ms. Thompson, please. Ma'am, you're up.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy to have a chance to join you this morning. It seems like we've been talking about respite care for a long time. So today my intent is to do a little bit of an overview, a little history for us, and then talk more specifics. So if we can have our first slide, please. So, again, I think a lot of you have been along for this ride. So we have been working respite care, been doing this for a long time, actually. When we look at the policy piece, we know that the NDAA of FY21 standardized EFMP processes across all military departments to include a standard respite care benefit. We know that the DOTI 131519, the Exceptional Family Member Program, was published in June of 23, and that directed or that implemented those requirements. So we know that we were talking about hours, that we were talking about use of a level of need rubric, and there are some changes, of course, with the hours, sibling care. We'll get into more of that as we're going. But that was the intent of this. We were standardizing respite care. When we look at what we did and what we had to do to get to where we are today, which is, we're really, we're crunch time, right? 1st of March is coming. So we had to revalidate the eligibility of individuals who were currently participating in our respite care program. Again, it was a heavy lift for you all, but there was 100% contact, 100%. So we, at this point, we had validated the eligibility of over 1,000 families. 760 were going to be eligible, so 67%. At that point, we had 408 families that were level of need 4, 352 for level of need 3. As you'll recall, too, our legacy benefits continued for all families through the end of this month. So that will end 28 February. So when we were looking at what we wanted to do with respite care, and we were talking at this point the provision of child respite care to increase access and availability, we wanted to look at contract services. And so we were able to join the Navy's contract with Child Care Aware of America. We did secure funding. We had hoped that we would be able to sign that contract the 1st of October. That didn't happen until the 21st of November. And they, again, are online to administer our EFMP Child Respite Care Program the 1st of March. Now, also with the standardization of respite care, as you know, we have not provided respite care for adults, but that is one of the elements that would be standardized. So at this point, we are positioning for delivery of adult respite care. It is a brand new requirement for us. So we've submitted an unfunded requirement. We're going to be able to solicit in advance of funding. Once funding is secured, we will be able to award the contract. What we will be looking at here our numbers will be quite a bit smaller. We are anticipating that probably 85 to 90% of those adults that will be eligible will be incapacitated adults. So we're probably looking 75 to maybe 125. But again, it's a great opportunity for us to provide service that we've not been able to do in the past. And we're excited about the opportunity to do that at some point. So certainly more to follow on that. If I could have the next slide, please. This is where we've been. And all of you have been along for this ride with us. We talked about the publication of the DOTI back in June of 23. Then we had to do training with all of our staff. There was an intentional gap between when we got the DOTI and when we actually started to use the level of need rubric and all that. And that was intended to allow us to bring people, get everybody on the same sheet of music. You've heard us say many, many times that our emphasis is on no wrong door. So we did all the training. The doctors and nurses that are utilizing the level of need rubric had to do training with OSN. It was quite a complicated process, and then they had to pass this test. So, they are really looking at that standardization. Then we looked at revalidating the eligibility of our families. And initially, we were looking at 6 months. We extended it a little bit so that our families could have the opportunity to get the paperwork in. We were not wanting to put any additional stress on people. That there's so many times there's change. But we did the revalidation. Families were notified of their eligibility and what their benefits would look like the 1st of March. They had an opportunity to work with their installation, family support coordinators, to look at additional resources, other things that might be available to help mitigate any negative impact. So when we are right, again, we're at crunch time. I did a briefing last week, it was actually to General Miller, where we talked about this 45-day sprint and what we've done to get there. And you all, of course, have been key in everything that we've done. So again, we are just about there. It has been quite a bit of work, and it will be more because we know some things are going to happen. So let me get to the next slide, please. So again, when we look at our transition, okay, we've got our DOTI and the date. We know that our family support group coordinators serve as the installation POC for families seeking respite care services. They'll be that POC for new applications, recertifications, reconsiderations, exceptions to policy. In the transition, we know that families that were determined to be level of need 1 and 2 will no longer be eligible for respite care benefits the 1st of March. When we look at what ends, what our families have been used to, and we understand again that of all the services, this will be the biggest change for DAF families because we had the most generous program. Sibling care was authorized. We had 40 hours of care per month. It was fairly easy. We were looking at really we weren't utilizing anything like a level of need rubric. We were using what we would get information from the doctors, and I think it was fairly easy. It was much easier to be eligible for respite care. Now, when you look at what the families that are eligible of the 1st of March, what they'll receive, again, sibling care is not going to be authorized any longer. Although respite care for adults will be coming online, we don't have that the 1st of March, but again, you'll be hearing more about that. But level of need assessment, level of need 3 families are going to get 20 hours a month per family. Level of need 4 will get 32 hours a month per family. So all of our families are going to notice a change, and it's going to be huge because you're going from 40 hours a month per person to 20 or 32 hours per family. We know that even though our families know that their eligibility changes the 1st of March, they have not experienced that loss yet, have they? So it's going to be a change. Do we expect certain things to happen? Do I expect that there will be an increase in requests for exceptions to policy? Absolutely. Um, it'll be an adjustment. I think our family support group coordinators will be getting a lot more families coming to look at additional resources. We are trying to look at other things that we can do and make available. But again, it's going to be a big change for them. So next slide, please. So again, these are our most recent figures. Child Care Aware will come online the 1st of March. We have worked with them. There is a respite care transition team that has consisted of headquarters, the EFMP Central Cell, Air Force Services. We have been meeting with them since that contract was signed weekly. And I think that there have been members that have probably actually been talking to them daily. When we look at what we have now, we have 370 families that are level of need 3, 426 that are level of need 4. As you all are aware, there was a follow-up memo that came from our office from Mr. Larry that went out to our families, those that were going to be continuing with respite care eligibility and those who would no longer be eligible. 80 installations completed contact with families. So you need to give yourselves a big hand because that was huge. And I can tell you that, we have been reaching out to families with Child Care Aware since the 20th of December and had an email from a family member who had received no contact, it seems, until she had actually gotten this memo. So again, we could check spam folders, we could do all of that. But when we can say to our leadership that 80 out of 80 installations have been contacted and that we have that documented, that speaks to the work that you all have done because that has happened because of each of you. We've got at this point 259 families that have completed their parental agreements. 309 of our respite care providers have completed their onboarding with Child Care Aware. Again, we're looking at today's EFMP Connect with you all, and then we'll be connecting with our families on the 26th. Ms. Reyes, I'll turn it over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. All right, next slide, please. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So I will be sharing information related to Child Care Aware and just some of the information they have shared with us for our providers and for our families transitioning to them effective as of 1 March. And so just to kind of go over some information, so feel free, if there are any questions, please feel free to place them in the chat as well. And so with Child Care Aware of America, Child Care Aware of America, as Ms. Thompson stated to you, was a Navy contract that we are now a part of. And so CCAOA has been partnering with the Navy since 2008, but they actually were partnered with the DAF from 2011 to 2019, when then it switched over to Air Force Services to provide the care with regard to families as well as for the providers. And so CCAOA's operational role will serve as the administrator of EFMP respite care. So very similar to how Air Force Services has handled in the past when working with families as well as providers. They will be providing that information as far as getting the families matched with providers and getting the updated information with regard to background checks and anything related to that for that provider to be vetted within the system, and then ensuring the families that are utilizing the respite program have also updated their paperwork, need to be recertified when the time comes up. They will be working with us very closely at the Central Cell to ensure that that continues to hopefully not create any delays in them utilizing respite care hours for their family. And so, and this will be effective as of 1 March, right? So, so I have gotten some questions in relationship to what will happen after 1 March. Who will families contact to be able to get their respite care hours set up? It would be through CCAOA. Anything related to this respite care will go through CCAOA with regard to, again, updating their documents and ensuring that their background checks for the providers piece, their background checks and their information is updated as well. Next slide, please. So kind of how to kind of tell you a little bit about how the transition has been working. So prior to where you see documents submitted on the slide, Air Force Services, as well as the Central Cell, have been working very closely to ensure that the information that they have been collecting and they have been documenting throughout this time that the respite care program has been in effect with Air Force Services has been effectively transferred to CCAOA. So that's been all in the background. And so families, and so in addition to that, what's been happening is we did have an EFMP Connect in December. And so some of that information, once that EFMP Connect was completed, it was for providers. CCAOA then sent out an email not only to providers but also to families. And so since that time, families as well as their providers, if the providers chose to continue, were to turn in required transition documents to CCAOA. And so in order for families to be matched to their particular provider, both of them had to ensure that those documents were submitted, and then at the same time, it was identified that they were matched with each other. And so Air Force Services was able to help us with that and to ensure that these families were matched to their provider. And so that list has all been forwarded up to CCAOA. And so once that information has been provided to CCAOA, CCAOA does their magic to kind of ensure that the families are matched to the provider that they will be utilizing from 1 March and forward. If for any reason their provider has chosen not to continue, CCAOA will identify a provider for them based on the needs that the family has identified for their family member. And so again, that's kind of all happening in the background. And again, without your assistance and you ensuring that our families are getting this information, hopefully the transition will not be as challenging for many of our families starting on 1 March. Next slide, please. And so what was the information, right? What documents were required from CCAOA, from families as well as providers? And so specifically from families, the EFMP Respite Care Parent Agreement, there was a parent agreement that was sent out for all identified current respite care families utilizing care. So, as I kind of stated in the previous slide, Air Force Services had shared many of the information in the background to CCAOA, or that was sent through us to CCAOA for them to be able to get that information. So the parents didn't necessarily have to do a whole lot of legwork because CCAOA and Air Force Services, we were all kind of working in conjunction with each other. So all of that information, once the respite care parent agreement was sent to the family just had to review it, sign it, complete it, and then get it sent back to CCAOA. And then, of course, any emergency forms, as you can see on there, the emergency forms can remain with the family and do not necessarily go back to CCAOA, but the main form was that respite care parent agreement. As far as for the provider documentation, the list of information required was, of course, the cleared background checks, any completed trainings that may have done through working with Air Force Services, and then, of course, just some administrative documentation with their direct deposit, any voided checks, anything related to that. Then, of course, the biggest thing is, of course, ensuring that their CPR and first aid certifications are up to date. There is a respite care provider agreement. And then again, a W-9 form, as well as resume, degree, and certificates as far as the administrative side the CCAOA has to track on their end. And so when you're working with a provider or a potential provider that wants to maybe become a respite care provider or is a current respite care provider, or any families that are telling you or sharing with you, I haven't heard anything, I haven't received anything, please refer them to the email that you see on there with the daf.ccaoa.transition@usa.childcareaware.org. They are usually very responsive. I will tell you that they are getting a lot of emails and they're getting a lot of questions, and they are answering them as quickly as they can. And so we have worked very closely with them, and we find them to be very, very open and willing to work with us as well as our families. So if you have any challenges or anything like that, I do refer you to email them directly on that. Now, because this this particular Connect focuses on the SNCs, SNTs, as well as the EFMP Family Support Team. If you have any questions with regard to CCAOA just in general, or as far as for just kind of what your role is, maybe you just wanted to get some clarification, please feel free to reach us up here at the Central Cell, and we will be able to work with you directly and answer those questions for you. Okay. I do see a question to go back to the first slide that could you just go back one slide? Okay,
Is this
so
the
it's
one you
saying,
needed, Melissa?
yeah, I'm just kind of reading what the person, what someone wrote. In the second bullet, it is stating that we are to send the RespiteCare application to CCAOA. No. This is specifically for families and respite care providers. You are specifically asking for the EFMP family support process. If a family is applying for respite care, that will need to go through the local MNFRC EFMP family support team, and then they will forward that information up to the Central Cell for processing through our medical team. Okay. So yes, this CCAOA is specifically for respite care providers and for families that have to update their paperwork or have to submit any required paperwork CCAOA is asking for. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, go to the next slide and one more slide. Thank you. So going into the frequently asked questions, so these are just some of the questions that I'm sharing it directly from CCAOA. So, some questions we have received is, how do I know if CCAOA has received my documents? So at this time, CCAOA has sent emails to both families and providers. So if you are hearing from families that, oh, I haven't heard anything, please let us know that. But at the same time, please encourage your families that you're working with that they need to be checking their spam and junk mail. In most cases, the email that has been provided is the email from the service member. So the service member's personal email address or the service member's .mil address may have been added, and the service member may not actively be checking that. So again, please encourage them to provide that information because CCAOA has been sending out information actively. And in most cases, it is going to the spam or junk mail or the emails are just not being checked frequently. Okay, so if for any reason that comes up, you can always refer back to the Central Cell. And if you can identify a couple of emails for us, we will follow up with CCAOA to make sure they have the most updated email that will hopefully get answered by the families. All right. So what if I turn in my documents after there was a January 31st, 2025 deadline that was identified back in the December Connect? And so between the December Connect and the 31st of January, anything that was received then, the intent was to really focus on getting those documents throughout the month of February. Not to say that none of the documents that were submitted in February were going to be put on the back burner, but they are actively still working. They're wanting to make sure that those initial documents get processed so then families can get matched to those providers and those providers can get fully vetted into the system. But at the same time, as new applications come in or as applications come in, they will be able to update that information as it kind of falls in status. All right. So just know if families ask you, I haven't heard anything. Again, we just if anything comes up like that, please feel free to reach back to the Central Cell and then we can follow up on our end. We don't want to bombard CCAOA just because they may be dealing with that. But if there's things that we can do on our end to maybe mitigate some of the challenges, maybe to identify specific emails that families may or may not have, or to ensure that the information is being sent accurately. Okay. And then the third question, how will I know if I'm able to continue with my current provider? As I stated earlier, once both family and provider have submitted all their documents, CCAOA will match that family to that particular provider. So the key is that ensuring that provider submits all of their required documents. And some of our families are working very closely with their providers because they certainly want to use them again. And so that has been very helpful. So just encourage your families and your providers to submit all the required documents. Okay, next slide, please. And so I'm a provider and I'm still waiting on my background check results from OPM. Will I not be able to start on 1 March? And so this is very helpful as far as what CCAOA is doing. And it specifically says in there, they have already submitted their request for a copy of their results, that to send them that email that they have, or to send them an email that they have done this, confirming that they have already submitted that request. And based on initiating that request, CCAOA will know that they are doing their due diligence to ensure that they have met the initial requirement. And so hopefully they will not be penalized, and the family will not be penalized from being able to use services after 1 March, or beginning 1 March, I should say. So again, following up again with any providers that may reach back to say, I'm still waiting on this. I'm concerned with the information that I'm not getting a quick response back from CCAOA. Just know that CCAOA is working on it, and then following up with CCAOA directly on their particular status. And this is for the providers. Okay. And so I am a provider. Do I still need to supply liability insurance? And so CCAOA will be maintaining that policy for participating providers beginning 1 March. And then, of course, can a provider and family make arrangements privately to add sibling care? So this is something that has come up a few times through various virtual trainings. So respite care, as you know, Ms. Thompson shared that respite care for our sibling care will no longer be authorized after 1 March. And so in addition to that, we are also getting questions from families. Well, can't we just pay them and then they can provide care for our family member that is not respite care eligible? And at this time, the expectation is that if there are children in the home that do require care that are not respite care eligible, is to have someone in the home that is 18 or over that can provide that care. The respite care provider is there to provide care for the eligible family members only. And there is a reason for that. It's to provide for the safety and health of that particular family member. And so again, it's to ensure that if they are going to be leaving their children there in the home, there needs to be somebody in the home that's at least 18 years or older. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. All right. And so this is just some basic information. Some families have come back and said, no sibling care is no longer authorized. How can I use respite care? Well, these are just some suggestions that are going to be shared during the Family EFMP Connect next week. So this is just for some information: taking a walk, having a date night, maybe taking the children that are no longer eligible for respite care and just spending some one-on-one time with them. So just some information. Next slide, please. And again, where to find more information in relationship to, transition for the respite care provider and the family member is to reach back out to CCAOA directly through their email address. And then they do have a transition webpage, and you can reach out to them through Child Care Aware of America's Facebook page. Not Facebook page, webpage. And then CCAOA will also be reaching out to the families and the providers once they've matched them, so that they know, as well as their respite care coordinators. So respite care coordinators within CCAOA, they will be connecting them with who those coordinators will be. So it's going to be a really kind of a more collaborative approach. Those families will know who their main point of contact will be through CCAOA, and then they'll be able to work more effectively moving forward as of 1 March. All right, next slide, please. Based on time, I'm going to pass this on to Ms. Sarah Johnson, who is the EFMP Medical RN. Passing it on to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, team. Again, my name is Sarah Johnson, and I'm the Respite Care Liaison at the EFMP Medical team. So today I'm going to talk a little bit on our respite care eligibility and benefits. So the sponsor is Department of Air Force Active Duty, or Air Force Reserve Air National Guard member. Air Force Reserve or National Guard is in an active duty status, as defined as the member must be performing full-time duty in a military status. The sponsor must be Q-coded. And when the family submits the application for respite care, there's mandatory 2 forms. One will be the family demographic form. Only 1 per family is needed. And then we also require the respite needs assessment, and we'll need 1 for each dependent that is requesting services. Next slide, please. All right, as we're aware, 28 February 2025 is the end date of our legacy benefits. And then on the 1 March, our DOD 1315.19, our respite care changes take effect. So sibling care is no longer authorized regardless of level of need. Our level of need 1 and 2 families are no longer eligible for respite care services. Our level of need 3 families are eligible for 20 hours per family, and our level of need 4 families are eligible for 32 hours per family. And then again, adult level of need 3 and 4 EFMs are eligible for care, but right now that contract is pending. And be more to come. Some respite care changes that also take effect is Air Force Services will no longer be managing our program, and Child Care Aware of America is our new respite care contractor. And then please note that Air Force Respite Care and the TRICARE Echo Respite Care are separate programs. Being found eligible for one will not disqualify a family from receiving services from the other. Next slide, please. So for reconsiderations, a family may request a reconsideration of their level of need determination at any time if they feel it does not reflect the needs of their family or the needs of their family member change. To complete the request, we need new medical or educational documentation submitted for review. The documentation can include updated respite needs assessment, an IEP, which is the individualized education plan, or medical documentation, like progress notes, a new evaluation, and then an updated level of need determination will be returned to the family within 30 days after they submit their reconsideration. Next slide. And then we have our exception to policy. Our service members may request an ETP if they're experiencing an exceptional circumstance that significantly impacts the wellness of a caregiver who's providing care to a family member with special needs, or that requires additional support to give temporary relief to the caregiver. To request an ETP, the service member will provide a written statement identifying those circumstances that require additional support and length additional support is needed. Then a multidisciplinary panel here at the central cell will review all ETP requests and determine if the request is approved, denied, requires modification, or additional information. And again, within 30 business days of the receipt of the request, we'll send a response. Next page. So here's an example. Families, a lot of our EFMP families have multiple EFMs. So families with multiple children that qualify for respite care will receive hours based on the highest level of need within the family. So a family is considered to be one child is a level of need 4, one child is a level of need 3, and one child is a level of need 1. So the family will be considered a level of need 4 and will receive 32 hours of care per month for the level of need 3 and 4 EFMs. The hours are no longer per dependent, and then the child with level of need 1 determination would no longer qualify for services. That is all I have. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat. And then that will be back to Ms. Dearman. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, thank you to all who took the time to put this brief together. Good questions. Great opportunity for us to see where we're at and the questions that are out there with the families, as well as our teams that are trying to help the families. We wanted to provide one more slide for you that has A little bit of information. You've probably seen it before, but we'll throw it up there again. To submit respite care package, you can send it to our workflow here at the EFMP Central Cell. For new providers that are interested in respite care services or respite care transition status, they can contact Child Care Aware of America by that email. And then lastly, we wanted to introduce Ms. Jennifer Houghton, who is our DAF EFMP Respite Care Liaison. She is working in our office now and just been here a few weeks and already doing amazing things. So welcome to Jennifer. So I will turn it over now and let you know, this is wrapping up the formal portion of the session. You'll have the opportunity to ask your questions if you want to continue to put those in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand at this point and ask your questions. Again, reminder that this is being recorded and you are automatically able to see it based on your invitation, but we do ask that you keep it to the list of invitees that initially went out. And at this point, I'll turn it over for questions. Thank you.
Real quick before we get started, there's 5 questions in the chat already. I wasn't sure if we can field those now, but those are also open too. So they're in the chat right now.
Okay, so let's roll back up there and see what we have left to answer.
It's pretty much toward the bottom. It says Emily
Yeah,
Chase and then
Miss
on
Chase,
down.
okay.
Yes.
So Miss Emily asks how many providers we have at our bases, and I will ask either Melissa or Miss Houghton if you can answer that one.
Oh, I apologize. So you're asking how many providers are currently at all of the bases? We will have to get, we do not have that information at this time, but we can get it. We will work on getting that information out. Is it specifically for a particular base?
Miss Melissa, this is Emily. I was just wondering, how do we find out how many providers we have at our base? Would we ask Child Care Aware of America?
Oh, yes, that's a great question, Emily. What we'll have to do is we will work with Ms. Houghton on getting that information once we've transitioned, and then hopefully we'll get that shared with the team.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for asking.
The next question is there a limit to the distance a provider is authorized for travel to provide care to approved family members?
So when I spoke with CCAOA, just because we've been going back and forth in reference to providers and ensuring that the families that are assigned to their particular bases, that those are the providers that are getting assigned to them. And so that is something that they're going to work directly with the families on. We do have a case that recently came up to us with regard to a family at more of an isolated location that wasn't necessarily close to a military base. And so CCAOA is already aware of that and trying to find providers in that particular area. So there's not necessarily a limit. You don't have to be close to a particular base. It just has to be identified that the family that is utilizing care or has been approved for respite care based on their location. CCAOA will work on trying to find a respite care provider in their immediate location.
Thanks, Melissa. The next question we've seen a couple of times in previous briefings. Does the provider get paid for 2 children or just hours? I think it bears another answer from us.
So that is a great question. And that is just something that we are not familiar with on our end. That would be directly with CCAOA. However, when you're looking at respite care hours, as Ms. Johnson shared, it is based on hours per family. And so how that is paid out would be working directly with CCAOA. And so providers would have to work directly with CCAOA to iron out that information.
Thanks, Melissa. Next question from Miss Melissa Heiser. Does this mean that the family will have to use respite care hours together for both EFMs and not at separate times?
Okay, I'll take that one then. So as Ms. Johnson shared earlier, it is based on hours. So to maximize your hours, if there are 2 children in the home, it's probably best to maximize the respite care hours and have both children being cared for at the same time. Because if they are separated, you do 1 child in the morning at 4 hours, and then you do 1 child in the afternoon at 4 hours. That's a total of 8 hours that the family will have used up by that.
Thanks again, Melissa. Ms. Henderson is asking, is it possible for active reservist guard to be added to the Q-coded roster? And I think with this one, it's a medical thing, and I think that they're going to have to talk to their SNCs, but please correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Sarah.
Actually, this is Patty Chabala.
Hi, Patty.
Hi. So reservists and guard on active duty orders do not receive a Q code. That is strictly for active duty Air Force only. The Q code is something that's specific to active duty Air Force and not guard or reserve. So no, they will not get added to a Q code roster. Over.
Thanks, Miss Patty. From Sammy Nates, I have an Army EFMP living on Hill, and the closest Army installation is Fort Carson. This family would qualify for respite care. Who would submit the respite package?
So I can answer that question. So because it is an Army family, they would not qualify for DAF Respite care. However, what you would need to do, Sam, is you will need to reach back to the closest Army installation, and then that information can be sent to them. And so then they can process it through the Army Respite Care program.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, any questions? Any more questions? Miss Melissa or Miss Sarah, do you guys have any questions that you would like? Oh, hold on, we've got one more that came in. Will transition process of RC services look like for our families PCSing to new bases?
That's a great question. And I think that I think this actually will be the transition process once a family identifies that, and we need to let them know. So if you are aware of your family that is leaving a particular installation or leaving your installation, that's part of that warm handoff that the EFMP family support team does. So if you know that, please let us know so that we can inform CCAOA as well. And then they can actively try to ensure that the family will transition with hopefully no delays in them utilizing respite care services at their new installation. So, as Ms. Thompson kind of shared in the beginning, it's not without all of your help to be able to ensure our families transition successfully. So this is all part of that too. It's all part of working together. So when you hear about a family transitioning to a new base, let us know, and then we will work with CCAOA to let them know as well.
I think there's another question from max age of child to qualify. Miss Sarah?
Yeah, I was just responding in the
Okay.
chat. But 18, but there are some instances with children, maybe due to their disability, they're still in school and under an IEP, the age of 19, 20. So we would reevaluate when we get that. And then again, we'll be offering adult respite care when we get those services.
Okay, how do we handle GSU locations?
Oh, again, so with regard to the GSU locations, if a family, let's say they are doing a recruiting duty that takes them away from the nearest installation as an example, so they would still submit through the closest EFMP office for respite care, or in some cases, they can also reach back to us directly, and they can find that on DAF Family Vector as well. But they can send us their documents, and then once we forward that to CCAOA will work with them to be able to find a respite care provider that will work with their family. So CCAOA will handle all of the logistics in relationship to finding those providers and matching those providers to the families.
Thanks, Melissa. The next question from Kimberly Strange is, if a family has legal guardianship of their adult dependent, will they be able to qualify regardless of age over age 22 as an example? Sarah, do you have the answer to that one for us?
I was just checking that. I believe so, but I would have to double check just to verify. Since they do have guardianship, we could verify with CCFOA. So I can always get back to Miss Strange, was it? Or
Yes, Miss
Yes,
Strange,
Miss Strange.
Kimberly Strange.
I think there may
Okay.
be an issue though if they're over age 22, because again, we're not set up to provide that for anyone that for adults yet, right?
Yet.
Because I noticed that the question shows over age 22.
Yeah, so pending if we have the adult sibling care, I mean, not sibling care, sorry, the adult respite care in place.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. From Miss Emily Chase, will existing Navy providers be accessible to our families as well, or will two branches have separate programs within CCAOA?
So I will be honest with you, Emily, I'm actually kind of excited about that because yes, they will have access to the Navy providers as well. And so I think that that will also increase the opportunities for our families to access other respite care providers in their community. So I see this as a great win for the DAF.
Okay, perfect. Okay, from Saeed, I'm not going to say the name right, Beckford. Is there a form the medical provider completes and instructions on how to complete?
I'll take this one.
Thank you.
So for respite care, the application process, there's a family demographic form that the family will complete. And then there's a respite needs assessment that the PCM will need to complete. It's pretty self-explanatory. There really there aren't instructions like how you may see on the DD form 2792. So the provider would just go through each section and complete it.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. Okay, another question. This one deals with, can the family member become the CCAOA RC provider if they go through the training?
Again, that would be a CCAOA direct question. And so that will be something that we can forward to them to answer. And we'll get back with you on that one.
Perfect. Ms. Melissa or Ms. Sarah, do you have any questions that you've been answering that haven't been addressed here that we might be able to share?
I will be honest, some of the questions that I had anticipated would be asked have already been asked. So I appreciate all of your questions because it just shows that you are hearing what the field is telling you as far as the families and just some of their concerns and questions as we start to transition. So thank you for asking those questions, but I don't have anything further on my end.
Thanks, Melissa.
The most popular question that I've gotten, I kind of put in the slides, is how families can use the hours now that it's per family and not per EFM. And then another question I did get yesterday twice when I was briefing with our family support team is for reconsiderations, is there a limit on how many reconsiderations a family can do? Like, can they only do one and then they've hit their max and can't reapply? A reconsideration can be done anytime that a family's medical or educational situation may change and they have additional documentation that they would like reviewed. So it's important that they know that. And anytime they submit for reconsideration, they do submit that new documentation. But besides that, a lot of the questions have been answered.
Perfect. We have a few more that have come in. From Wendy Scott, will we have a local contractor that will be administering the Air Force Respite Care Program under CCAOA?
So that is the question that we will have to forward to CCAOA and then get back with you on that one as well.
Thanks, Melissa. What happens when we have new providers who trains them?
So again, any new providers will be working directly with CCAOA on what is required for them to be able to provide care to families. So CCA will handle all of those logistics and administrative things related to the provider care.
A follow-on question, I think, will they be recruiting for providers as well?
Yes, actively recruiting all the time. One of the things that I hope we'll be able to receive is that we will be, especially at the family support level, is we will be able to get pamphlets and brochures on potential people that may be interested in becoming a respite care provider. I think especially at the family support side, because we have family members that are coming in that are PCSing into our installation. And so maybe they might want to have a job at, as a PCS. It's a great opportunity for them to be able to hopefully be a respite care provider. But as far as for that, they will be active. CCAOA will be actively doing it on their end, and hopefully we'll be able to support by at least having information to hand out on our end at the base level.
Okay, Melissa, they have further clarified a question that they just asked. What happens when we have new providers and who trains them? I think they're specifically talking to primary care providers in the clinic.
I'll take that, Ms. Dearman.
Thanks, Sarah.
So Ms. Beckford, we don't have training for our providers for our respite care form, our needs assessment form that they would be filling out, I'd be more than happy to send you a copy so you can review it, and then maybe you can show your providers just so they know what it looks like in case they get it. But it is pretty self-explanatory and shouldn't be difficult in completing. But I'll email you one.
Thanks, Sarah.
Also, this is Patty Chabala again. That's something too that the SGH, who is the chief of the medical staff, should be able to help any new providers as far as training with that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. Okay, we have a question a little bit further up. Is there respite care in Oconus?
No, respite care is not in Oconus.
Okay. And then a follow-up said yesterday it was briefed that members on remote or deployed may lose Air Force respite due to admin or ADM not being in the home. Is this going to be looked at or changed, or are we going to have to do an exception to policy? We have a lot of deployments, and I'm concerned about how it's going to work for the families.
So
go ahead.
So just to kind of talk about that particular piece is they won't lose their respite care. However, the intent is that because the service member must be in the home for the families to receive the respite care, if for any reason that they are deployed or they're separated due to a duty, an isolated duty, or a geographically separated duty, the exception to policy is just because of the fact that the service member is not in the home. But in most cases, that's just something that's an ETP that will need to be sent up, but it does not necessarily mean the family will lose their care. And they won't be losing their care even while they're asking for the exception of policy. It's just something for us to be aware of, because for that particular time, as an example, let's say the service member is deployed and the family is receiving the lowest amount of hours because they're a level of need 3 and it's 20 hours. Maybe they can also request, in addition to the exception of policy, they may ask for my service member is deployed, and then maybe I'd like to ask for an additional 5 hours a month or an additional 10 hours a month until my service member returns in 2 or 3 months. So that is kind of how that can also work too for the families that have remained to care for their EFMP family members. So the exception of policy is kind of something that we have that's available. And so I would actually refer back to Ms. Johnson, because that's her lane, and I'm kind of probably over speaking. But Ms. Johnson, if you wanted to say, yes, that's correct, Melissa, or let me take over, you are welcome to do it as well.
Oh, I see Ms. Martinez has her hands up, so she may have something to add. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify a little bit. So the example yesterday, I think maybe could have been more clear. So we're not talking about a traditional deployment. The example kind of given yesterday is where we see ETPs coming in is if the sponsor, the military member, is deployed and is requesting, say, for their ex-spouse to utilize respite care services, or if their children will be moving to another location than the member's home base. So say a member is stationed at JBSA Lackland, will be getting deployed. The member is relocating the kids to Nellis for the length of the deployment. That's kind of where we see those ETPs, not for your generic TDYs and deployments. Or again, if they want an ex-spouse to utilize services while they're deployed, those are some of the ETPs we have seen, because this ex-spouse is not entitled to the respite care benefits. It belongs to the active duty member. But we do know when the member is deployed, that caregiver becomes this ex-spouse. So kind of wanted to clarify that just a little bit more.
Thanks, Miss Ashley. Okay, team, we have made it to our 10 o'clock mark. I know there are just a few more questions here in the chat that we should be able to answer before we close, but I did want to quickly just say thank you again for you all taking the time to be a part of this. We really, our intent and our goal is to make sure that we are all singing from the same sheet of music, as you might say, to when our families are asking questions, we are answering them in concert with what we have, and giving you guys the opportunity to get the direct brief updates. Next week will be our more open. It will be level of need 3 and 4 families that will join along with you as you choose, so that we can help answer their questions. And what you've asked today and talked with today about this program with us will help us to make sure that when CCAOA is on, that they're talking to these questions, most frequently asked questions as well. So we thank you for being a part of this today. And if you still have questions, please feel free to add them to the chat area. And again, this is recorded, so we'll make sure that you all have access to it. Anything else from Miss Melissa, Miss Sarah, before we turn off? And Miss
No,
Thompson? Okay, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I have nothing further, but if anyone has any questions, they can always submit it to our workflow org box, and I can put that in the chat.
Thanks, Sarah. Miss Thompson,
And I don't have any
anything?
questions, but I did want to, again, thank everybody for their hard work. It is, I think, the next couple of weeks will probably be extremely busy, lots of questions, but we couldn't have gotten to this point without you. So please understand that, and know that every time I've had an opportunity to brief, I have talked about all the work that has been done, and the efforts that we've made as a team to make sure that our families transition as smoothly as they possibly can. So again, thank you. You've done a great job. It's much appreciated.
Perfect. Everyone have a wonderful day, and if we see you again next week, that'll be great.